What's up, everyone? Nan here, and we've got another modern episode. And this time, we're going to be focusing on Midnight Hunt and what cards from the new Innistrad set have the potential to see play in modern. These are going to be kind of ranked in semi-order of cards that I see more likely to be played versus less likely to be played. Now, there's a lot of really cool cards in here, and some of your lists might be a little bit different. One of my cards is kind of double cards together. You'll see it all about it. We're going to basically go through 6 different cards that I think have the potential to do something in modern. All right, so starting things off with number 5/6. I don't know. We're the lowest ranking, wherever we're at. I don't remember our numbers here. That's hard, but there's 2 cards that we're going to highlight. Boom and boom. So we've got a red card, mono red, and a blue white card. I put them kind of together in this because they kind of are fitting the plan that I think they will fit within modern. So we've got Cathartic Pyre here for 1 and a red, and it's an instant. Choose one. Cathartic Pyre deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many. Faithful Mending, 1 and a blue, or sorry, white and a blue. You gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It also has flashback for 1 extra colorless in there. So for a total of 3 mana, you can be able to flash this back and cast it again. Very similar to the idea of Faithless Looting that was banned in Modern. Now we have to spend 2 mana to get similar effects. I'm highlighting these cards just because of the utility of it. Cathartic Pyre is very similar to Abrade, which has that kind of burn effect, but it also, Abrade destroys artifacts. Cathartic Pyre allows us to draw and discard just like Faithless Looting did. Same thing for Faithful Mending is along the same lines. Draw, discard. We're kind of trying to do that. Cathartic Pyre does make you discard first. So again, if you care more about fueling your graveyard than just drawing cards, that's the way to go. I feel like both these strategies are going to fit nicely into potential revitalizing an Arclight Phoenix type strategy. The deck existed pre-banning of Faithless Looting. It's not really existed since then. Part of it is, hey, there's cool fuel mechanics that exist. Cathartic Reunion is one of it, right? There are people that are running that and trying to make that work, but having more tools to help you get this strategy up and running is great. It is slower now, right? In order for us to be able to fuel our graveyard, we have to be spending 2 mana. It's really hard when there's a monkey running around causing havoc and messing things up, but it has the potential to be doing something in modern. That's why this is my kind of low number 5/6 pick. Going into our next pick that we've got a kind of upgrade of an old modern card. So Sunset Revelry is our newest addition. It costs 1 and a white. If an opponent has more life than you, gain 4 life. If an opponent controls more creatures than you, create 2 1/1 white human creatures tokens. And if your opponent has more cards in their hand than you, draw a card. I'm highlighting this one in here because it is basically an upgraded version of Timely Reinforcements, which is an old sideboard card that blue-white or Jeskai control lists used to run, which basically says for 2 and a white, if you have less life than your opponent, gain 6. If you control fewer creatures than your opponent, create 3 1/1 white soldier tokens. Very similar to that Sunset. Sunset, of course, costs 1 less mana. You get 2 less life. You get 1 less creature, but you get to draw a card off it. So you can be able to replace yourself. So that's why I'm highlighting this here on this list, because Timely Reinforcements in olden days was a sideboard playable card. Sunset Revelry has that potential to be a sideboard playable card depending on how the meta goes, how things shift. Having no creatures in a control type shell doesn't seem that improbable. So having that in there, also that draw mechanic does make a difference, especially for white decks. The life helping to protect you against burn strategies. So I just see it as a potential sideboard card in certain decks and certain strategies there. And that's why I'm picking that on my list. The next 2 cards that we're going to highlight are potential for decks that don't quite exist. Some people have tried to brew them, but they're not quite there yet. So first one that we're going to be talking about is our green black. And that's old stick fingers here. You're like, what does this even do? Why are you highlighting this as number 3? Well, hear me out, guys. There were some new cards that got added in to Modern that were focused on graveyard strategies, specifically with our ability to fuel our graveyard, right, and bring things back. Unmarked Grave and Persist are those 2 cards that I'm referring to. Both of them are focusing on throwing things, non-legendary creatures, into our graveyard. And Stick Fingers is kind of fueling our graveyard as well. Whenever you cast this spell, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards. So I can pay 2 mana into this, right, for 4. Most likely I'm going to be casting it for 3. Let's be honest, right? If I'm trying to speed things up, we'll highlight 3 mana. Paying 3 mana, hoping to find a creature, put it into my graveyard. If I paid 2 mana into it, I'd find 2 creatures, put them into my graveyard. But again, if we're going for speed, which Modern tends to be, we want to be able to cast this on turn 3. We don't want to run too many in our list of our graveyard fueling because we don't want to be hitting another Stick Fingers because we can't bring it back with Persist. But we're hoping to hit things like our Archon of Cruelty. We're hoping to hit things like Sun Titan in here, right? Things like that where we can run a play set of each of these and maybe add 2 Stick Fingers in here to kind of fuel things with our Unmarked Grave and our Persist. So I'm thinking that there is a good potential for a green-black reanimation strategy that exists. Something that's kind of outside of our Goryo's Vengeance big legendary creatures that already exist in Modern. So this is kind of more of a non-legendary bully style of reanimation. So for our next pick, we're going to be talking about another weird card that I think could create a deck or help push a deck. Let's be honest. This is a weird card. You might look at it and go, what? There's no way that's going to be Modern playable. Maybe, but maybe not. We'll see. So Suspicious Stowaway is what we're referring to. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1. It can't be blocked. And when it deals damage, you get a loot. Draw a card, discard a card. And it's got that Daybound effect because it is a werewolf. So if a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night. And he will transform into our Seafaring Werewolf. And again, he's a 2/1, can't be blocked. And when he deals damage to a player, you just draw a card. I don't suspect us to ever flip it into the Seafaring Werewolf. Really what we're trying to do with this Suspicious Stowaway is to fuel a mechanic called ninjutsu. All right, we've got some ninjas that exist in Modern. We've got some more printings of things that have popped up, especially with Modern Horizons 1. We're referring, of course, to our Ingenious Infiltrator here and our Fallen Shinobi. There's also like Ninja of the Deep Hours if you wanted to go that route, which normally would cost 4 for a 2/2. When he deals damage to a player, draw that many cards. He's got ninjutsu for 2, 1 and a blue, so I would recommend throwing that in if you're doing it. But our Ingenious Infiltrator is a 2/3. His ninjutsu is, of course, a blue and a black, and when he deals damage to a player, draw a card. And our Fallen Shinobi makes our opponent mill cards. They exile their top 2 cards, to be specific, and then until your next turn, or until the end of the turn, you may play those cards without paying their mana cost. So there have been fairy-based ninja decks up to this point, but I feel like being able to go through our library a little bit quicker, find answers, find more removal spells, find more ninjas, might be able to help us get things going. Really, we want stuff on turn 1 that we can fly and kind of poke people with. So you're going to run things like maybe some Slithering Blade, some weird like unblockable stuff if you want to. But this having unblockable and the ability to draw cards is the reason I would say it might help fuel our strategies for ninjas. But that's kind of our last pick of, hey, these have the potentials. Cards that I think that are definitely going to be seeing play are going to be up next. And for our final 2 cards that we're going to be highlighting, Teferi Who Slows the Sunset. I feel like I need to read that very slowly. 2 colorless, a white and a blue for 4 loyalty planeswalker. 4 mana, you might think is a little bit on the high end as Planeswalkers goes for Modern, because that 2-3 mana is kind of our sweet spot where we want to be with how quickly we're playing this game. But his +1 loyalty ability lets you choose up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target land. Untap those if you control them, and tap those if you don't control them. You also gain 2 life. His -2 loyalty will let you look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So cool, getting some fuel that way. And then his emblem, his ultimate ability, -7 loyalty. You get an emblem with untap all permanents you control during each other's untap step. You draw a card during each opponent's draw step. So it's saying, hey, I heard that you like to untap things. I heard that you like to draw spells. Seems like you're a control player. Let's get you an emblem that kind of benefits you. The reason I'm seeing this as kind of a good Modern playable card, and specifically when I read his +1 loyalty, I was like, hey, what are some creatures that are in blue and white that we care about untapping? That's right, I'm referring to our Stoneforge Mystic. So he does have that ability. When he enters, you search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. Pay 2, 1 and a white, tap him, put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. Of course, to play him, he's a 1/2 for 1 colorless and a white. But being able to untap that and untap one of your lands, this seems like a pretty good. Now, you could go even a step further and run the blue-white artifact lands and get an extra land out of it too. So you could say, I'm going to untap Stoneforge Mystic, I'll untap my artifact land, I'll untap a regular land. Most Stoneforge lists are running the Cauldron Complete, all right? Costs 7 mana to equip it for 7. Really, it's like, hey, I want to cheat this out with Stoneforge, and now I've got a 5/5 first strike, trample, indestructible, and haste creature. And whenever it deals damage to a creature, I exile that creature. It's a living weapon, so it's a 5/5 germ, essentially. People are running one of, because they're like, why do I need more? There are a lot of the Stoneforge decks are trying out the Orzhov version right now. They're running about 5 artifact package in their list. Sometimes you get more than one in your hand already, and you're like, okay, hopefully I can Stoneforge something out. This helps you go that route. It also could allow you to play more than one version of certain things. People are running Batterskull. Going into our next pick, Rite of Harmony. All right, so whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. It costs green and a white. You may also flash it back for 2 colorless, a green and a white. So this, and there have been other variations on this card that have popped up at some point, but this is a variation of them trying to make Glimpse of Nature quote-unquote fair. Glimpse of Nature, of course, from Kamigawa Block was our 1 green. Whenever you play a creature spell, draw a card. And that's, of course, this turn. That is sorcery speed. Rite of Harmony is instant. That's not really relevant for us. We're not going to be caring so much. But really, there are existing elf decks that run like 30 creatures. If you're sitting there and just dumping out all the cards and constantly recasting them, because we did get things like Curian Ranger, return a forest that you control to your owner's hand, untap target creature, activate it once each turn. You can be able to sit here and generate a lot of mana off of Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinel and just sort of pump and dump this sort of strategy, and then just, okay, I'll draw my whole deck essentially. Not really your whole deck, but you get the point. You're going to be making huge mana strides and getting so much benefit from it. The other versions are, of course, Enchantress lists that exist. I could see maybe a 1 of, 2 of in a list as just extra fuel to drive things. You're not really playing too many like enchantments all in one turn. You're doing a lot of build up, but you do have that potential if you were to draw into something like a Utopian Sprawl, On Thin Ice, Abundant Growth, Mana Bloom, something like low that you need. Even your creatures that cost 2 mana, having this out and being like, all right, I'm going to play a creature and a spell, like 1 enchantment this turn, pay 2 mana, draw 2 cards. It has flashback if you get a lot of mana later. right? Something like a Sanctum Weaver can let you get a lot of mana later, where you could be able to flash this back and then just play a bunch of stuff. So I do see those kind of having the potential to fit into an elf strategy as well as enchantress strategies because of that double duty. I see it less likely to play in specific enchantress builds, but it does have that potential, you know, because of how things are working with enchantress. But elves definitely could easily splash white to be able to start running this because, hey, people ran black for the longest time to help kind of burn our opponents down. There's even just mono green elves list, so I don't see why there can't be a really powerful green white speed version. So that's why that's coming in as one of our last picks. Modern is going to have a lot of really cool cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. I feel like there's a lot of sweet legendaries, and it's going to be seeing a lot more cool commander strategies come up with the cards than modern, but these are the modern cards that I think have the biggest potential to do something, at least from the initial lookings before we get into too deep into brewing. Some of the cards that I talked about early on are the ones that I'm going to be brewing and trying to find some fun strategies to go for. But if you guys like this video, make sure you're hitting that follow, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next game. Hey everyone, Nanman here. I'm a StarCraft 2 and Magic the Gathering content maker and commentator. Thanks for tuning in and watching, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and check the description for more information about other content that I'm doing. I've also got a new podcast, Nanman's Nerd Corner, which you guys can find out on Spotify or iTunes. It's got a bunch of Magic content as well as other stuff. Thanks for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you guys next game.